You're listening to the Two Man Advantage Podcast. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The NBA's free agent bonanza has now come full circle, leaving some teams grinning from ear to ear and others wondering what happened. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you a fond good afternoon alongside my broadcasting partner, Nick Deziel. My name's Kevin McShan, and today we have some NBA free agents served up for you on the platter. Nick, always good to see you, and thanks for being here today.
Very nice to see you, Kevin. I'm ready to talk some basketball. Me and Kyle hit on everything else pretty much the other day, and now it's our turn to hit on some b-ball.
All right, so let's dive right into the discussion today, Nick. With this, we saw earlier this morning the Pistons had re-engaged in trade talk with the Sacramento Kings.
Thank God. They need to get rid of that bum and that contract. That's one of the things Dumars will be remembered for on the way out is signing Josh Smith and leaving that dead weight there. They want to keep Monroe. Obviously, he's the younger, better player, the team player. He wants to be involved, but obviously there's a rift between Monroe, Smith, the Pistons organization. There's something not right there, and they need to move that contract and Josh Smith. And if they can do that, regardless of who the hell they get for him, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, at this point, it's about just getting rid of righting the wrongs of Joe Dumars. And like you said, whether they get a bag of baseballs or basketballs for Josh Smith, it's all about moving that contract and turning the page from that era, because obviously he's a bad piece of this puzzle, and he obviously doesn't fit in the long-term plans of the team.
Yeah, so, and obviously with a new GM there and coach and Stan Van Gundy, he wants to get his guys. And you know how he does it there. He lives and dies by the three. And he's going to need some guys to shoot that long ball. They just made a couple signings in Butler and
Jody Meeks, yeah.
Yes. So what exactly do you think? How do you think that helps the Pistons moving forward? And do you think maybe they're just stockpiling some stuff for a trade? Or do you think these guys are going to be on the roster when opening day is here?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think when Stan Van Gundy introduced both Meeks and Butler, he did say their top priority was to get perimeter shooting. So that tells you that he'll have the same offensive plan anyway he had in Orlando with Dwight Howard and with Andre Drummond being his Dwight Howard here. And obviously, if you're going to run that system, you need perimeter shooting. They also went out after Morrow, who signed with Oklahoma City yesterday. So they're making a concerted effort to surround both Andre Drummond and Greg Monroe, who Stan Van Gundy also said that he wanted back as a restricted free agent. They're making an effort to surround them with shooters, so it'll be a carbon copy of what you saw under Van Gundy in Orlando.
It also says here that the Pistons and Blazers are talking about a Monroe trade. So if Sacramento and that trade doesn't go through with Smith, then they're obviously looking to move Monroe. And I think regardless of Smith, it'll dictate Monroe's future. And it would be really unfortunate if Detroit misses out on Greg Monroe, which is a young, big, talented forward that can be able to put the ball in the hoop. And if they can't get rid of Smith, then they're going to have that bad attitude and that dead weight contract on that bench, and God knows where the Pistons' future can go from there.
Well, I mean, if they get rid of Greg Monroe, it would be a step back for the organization, because they've made an effort or a concerted effort to make sure that they keep him. And Josh Smith, as you said, that contract still has $42 million on it. So it's time to get a plan of action in place for the Josh Smith scenario. So let's move on to our next topic.
Okay, let's move on to Canada's team, the Toronto Raptors. They got Laurie signed in, and ready to rock and roll. He seems to be happy he's in Toronto. What exactly you think is in the plans or in the future of the Raptors? And I believe at some point they're going to make a trade as well. There's some talks now that all the free agency stuff's kind of died down, that the trade talks have now started to get hot and heavy with the Raptors as well.
Well, a couple of things with the Raptors and their situation. I think for their offseason plan, a lot of it was re-signing their own guys. They gave Lowry a 4-year contract for $48 million, so he'll make $12 million a year. They also re-signed Valanciunas and their head coach Joanne Casey. So I think for the Raptors brass, it's all about retaining their own and building from within. The draft was a little bit suspect, but the Raptors are building a solid core and a nucleus, and I think for them it's all about maintaining their own core of players rather than looking outside. But just like the Pistons, they are stockpiling a lot of guards. So a trade possibility is a realistic expectation for both clubs.
Also, like you said, they are re-signing their own guys. It's all young talent. You got Valanciunas, Lowry, then you have DeRozan, which is your own young talent. They really have a chance to do something special, especially if they sprinkle in the veterans and a couple of key pieces to carry that. Because to be honest, everybody knows out there, any basketball fan out there listening to this right now knows the Raptors beat the Brooklyn Nets in a 7-game series.
You're still bitter about that, huh?
Not that I'm bitter about it, but it's blatantly obvious. And it was great basketball. It'll come down to a very entertaining finish.
It was a good series, yeah.
But I think the Raptors kind of got jobbed in a couple different sense. We don't need to go back over that and rehash it. But they really have a chance to make a run and do something special, especially in the East that the Cavs, like we're going to move on to them next, but the Cavaliers maybe are the best team tonight. The Heat are out of it. You got the Bulls possibly. The East is really wide open. Also, a little tidbit for you Raptors fans out there. They're going to be wearing their wet retros this year.
Oh, my.
Which I personally love. We'll get a picture of those retro jerseys up on our Facebook page when we got a shot. So, final take on the Raptors, and then we'll move on to the Cavaliers.
Well, my final take on the Raptors is all about player development. They've got to develop the young talent they have already on the roster. They made a playoff run. As you said, they probably should have won that series. So for Dwayne Casey and the management group there, it's all about developing and cultivating their own talent and maximizing the talent they already have.
Let's transition to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They signed
the Savior's back.
They signed some guy last week. What's his name?
I
think he's okay.
He's a little bit okay, yeah.
So, what do you think about him coming back? We know our own Kyle Simpkins.
Yes, he's about ready to pull his hair out about the whole thing.
He had a beautiful rant for 2MA Podcast. Check us out on www.2MApodcast.com.
Shameless plug. No.
Yeah. Hey, nothing wrong with that.
That's
check us
right.
out. If you're listening to this now, you're probably on our website anyway. Go into our podcast page and check out our rants. We always like to get riled up and tell you something that sometimes you don't want to hear, but we're going to tell you anyway. And Kyle Simpkins went off about LeBron James. What do you think about everything that went down and how he did it and the whole college comment and all that?
Well, I think that it's a great story for the NBA, the league itself, and Cleveland, the city of Cleveland. I think it's a tremendous story, but I also think it's been overcovered. I also think that every time LeBron James sneezes, it's covered on ESPN or a local sports affiliate. So I think we've been a little oversaturated. I do think that Cleveland will make a deep run in the playoffs. That's a young basketball team, depending on how many of the young pieces they keep, because there's been word that they're going to possibly use some of them in a trade. I don't know if they're able.
Stupid.
able
They trade
to.
Wiggins for Love. That's retarded.
Yeah, I don't know if they don't give them Wiggins in Minnesota that they'll get Love, but they seem convinced, at least for now anyway, that he's going to stay Wiggins. So I do think Cleveland's a better team. I do think there'll be some growing pains with that club as they gel and go together, but I do think they're a more athletic and younger version of the Heat, which I do still think they'll be a playoff team, but certainly not go as deep as they did when they had LeBron.
Okay, so Chris Bosh.
I
I don't want to get you started yet because we still have a 2MA rant coming from Kevin McShan because he is the last member of 2MA to give you his rant this week. So we'll save that. But are they grasping for straws? What is the Heat now that we'll move from the Cavs because we know they have a good young team and they have Wiggins and they have Irving and they have LBJ. He's coming back now. They have a really good young nucleus that they obviously didn't have before LBJ left. They started building this when he left. Now we come back, and I think he could be a key piece to maybe putting this team over the top.
Well,
now the Heat.
Yes.
What position are they in? They re-signed Wade for a couple of years. He can't stay healthy. He's been long. The tooth has been long on Wade for a long time now. They signed Bosh to this massive contract. Where is this team going?
Well, I do still think they're a playoff team because the Eastern Conference it's not very good. But I do think they're a playoff team. I do think they'll win a playoff series. But after that, not really, because LeBron James did everything for that team. And one of the reasons he left Miami is because they were unable to sustain both the big three and putting a supporting cast around him. So moving to Cleveland allows him to have a more athletic team. But if you're asking me specifically about Miami itself, I do think they're a first-round playoff team winner. But after that, I think they'll be maxed out.
Okay, so we went hot and heavy in the Eastern Conference today. And before we get to your rant, I want you to tell that you said a little something to me off the air about the Chicago Bulls. Do you think they really have the team to make a run to maybe win this conference?
Well, I think a couple of things with the Bulls. I think it all depends, of course, on how healthy Derrick Rose is, and I think him.
I think, if anything, he's living on equity, that guy.
Yeah.
Okay, will he play again?
Well, I think the sign or
he's amazing when he plays, but he just can't stay healthy, and it just doesn't seem that he's very interested in, getting. Not that he doesn't want to get healthy. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that he just seems to be very content where he's at, kind of being that cheerleader role. So that's very concerning if I'm a Bulls fan.
Well, I would say this. I think the more physical contact Derrick Rose can get, the better. So I think him trying out, or at least being invited to try out for Team USA is a good thing in Las Vegas because the more physical contact and competition he can get, the better. I do think the Bulls are a preeminent favorite to win the East, particularly because they signed Paul Gasol. I know that he's 34 years old, and I know that the Bulls struggled to score last year, and that's precisely why they drafted Doug McDermott. So I do think the Bulls will be an improved offensive team, which will increase their chances of winning the East because they play solid defense. So if I'm looking for a favorite in the East, it would be Cleveland or Chicago.
Paul Pierce is signed with the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, I think that's a solid pickup for Washington. Washington's a very good team. They've got Bradley Beal, John Wall's turning into one of the elite point guards in the league, getting Paul Pierce for $11 million. In NBA terms, that's an awfully cheap deal because it's $5.5 billion a season for a 2-year contract. For what Paul Pierce brings you, he can still give you about 10 to 12 to 15 points a game, and he's a solid,
big,
solid and
shooter.
vocal leader in the locker room. He can shoot as well.
When it's clutch situations and pressure situations,
He's thrived in that, both
as the Toronto Raptors.
later after that phantom call. But anyway, later in his career, his physical stats and stature may not be the same, but what you get in the leadership department, I think, is worth it for the Withers.
Thanks for tuning in this week for NBA Free Agent Frenzy Talk here on the Two Man Advantage podcast. Check us out on 2omapodcast.com. Like us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/2OMA Sports. Also check us out and follow us on Twitter on twitter.com/2OMA Sports. Kevin's First Take, Mobilizing Media on our website.
And the upcoming interview with Greg Cathy, which we did earlier.
You did a great job. It's going to be a great interview. Everybody that's a college basketball fan out there,
Stay tuned for that interview.
The one and done rule. It's a really, really good interview. It's really in depth, and he gives us some answers that a lot of people would not expect. So definitely stay tuned for that. That is going in the process of being edited up now and probably be ready to rock early next week. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. For Kevin McShan, I'm Nick Deziel. Take care.